I saw a clip of Djokovic practicing in Madrid on Reddit, and I would show you the clip, but it's very explicit. He was speaking in Serbian and he was very negative. He said, F this sport, F tennis. Interestingly, I've been practicing a lot with my new racket, the Wilson Shift. For you guys that don't know, I switched to the Shift earlier this year. And I said the exact same thing Djokovic said in a practice today. So I can completely identify with what Djokovic was saying. I wouldn't put too much importance on Djokovic's negativity during the practice because at the tournament in Miami, prior to the tournament starting, there was another clip where he was being very negative and he ended up making the final of Miami. So let's see how Djokovic does in Madrid. But a couple of days ago, I made a video where I hyped up two players, Eala and Møller. And I hope you got a chance to watch these two players because they're already gone. Now, to be fair, I didn't think that both of them were going to win. They faced incredibly tough opponents. So I just want to touch upon those two matches that I hyped up and give you my analysis of them. So let's start with Eala against Swiatek. And like I said a couple days ago, I think somebody put a voodoo hex on the Swiatek draw. But things are looking a lot better for Swiatek because she started this match with an inexplicable choice of tactics. She was basically looking to end the point on the first ball or the second ball, basically looking to hit a winner very early in the rally. Now, this is not Iga's game style. I think that Iga has a good chance to become the greatest clay court player in the history of women's tennis. That's clearly Chris Evert, and Iga is going to have to do a lot of work to match the records of Chris Evert. These records might never be broken. Some of the Chris Evert records are similar to the Rafael Nadal records on clay. But in my opinion, Iga does have a realistic chance to match or eclipse the 7 French Open titles of Chris Evert. And what do all great clay court players have in common? Well, that's patience. Chris Evert certainly one of the most consistent and precise players of all time. And that certainly also applies to Iga with a little bit of a caveat because Iga is not only very consistent when she's at her best, but she also hits the ball very heavy. So even her consistent shots from the baseline can draw errors from the opponent. And Iga has won so many matches very easily, some even 0-0, but a very frequent scoreline when Iga is at her best is 1-1 or 2-2. So in the first set against Eala today, Iga was committing a tremendous amount of unforced errors. Now Eala didn't really have to do anything special. She did play well in the first set. And like I said in the video from a couple of days ago, clay is not Eala's favorite surface. And that makes sense from a tactical standpoint because Eala likes to take the ball early. She has a phenomenal return of serve, one of the best second serve returns that I've seen on the WTA Tour. And when the ball sits up for her a little bit, she likes to take it early and lean into it. She also hits the forehand very flat at certain times, and that usually doesn't translate well to clay. This can work well on hard court, and it's going to be interesting to see how Eala performs on grass. And Alexandra did what she needed to do in that first set. She was very solid, and Iga basically self-destructed. And what I find so interesting about the game of tennis is the following. Imagine that Iga didn't come out of this slump in this match. Iga ended up winning this match 6-1 in the third. She did start to play more steady in the second set. But let's just say that she didn't. That she continued to spray the ball, make a lot of errors, and she loses this match in straight sets to Eala. Now, she would have lost twice to Eala consecutively and also twice to Ostapenko. I think this would have had a very bad effect, not only on the rest of the clay season, but possibly this could have lingered even for the rest of the entire season. But the incredible thing about the game of tennis is that when players make it through adversity, when they find themselves playing their worst tennis, if they come out victorious, this is some of the most valuable thing that a player can acquire. Because my gut feeling is that Iga, now that she came through this tough draw, and she played well in the third set, which she won 6-1. Her confidence is slowly going to start to rise, and not only does she have a good chance to win the Madrid tournament, she can dominate the clay season again like she did in the previous year. And that's truly what differentiates the greatest tennis players from the great tennis players, is the fact that they can have a horrible first, second round, and as they start getting towards the end of the tournament, they find their best tennis, or in one specific match, they can play a horrendous first set and then somehow find a way to win. What happens to a lot of tennis players is the fact that when they play poorly, they end up losing, and then maybe they play better on another day. So they play well when everything is aligned their way, but when things are not going their way, they have a hard time turning those matches around. And as simplistic as this sounds, find your best tennis when things are not going your way in a match, this is something that's incredibly difficult to do. So this was an incredible victory from Eala. If you watch this match, you saw how poorly she was playing in the first set, and compare that to the third set. That's what makes tennis one of the most interesting sports out there, because after all, the mental game in tennis is so crucial, especially at the highest level. Now, I hyped up Møller in my last video for good reason, because he is very unorthodox. First of all, he stands up somewhat straight when he's playing. He has the pinky off the handle on the forehand, and he also has a Western grip. But he hits one of the hardest backhands that I've ever seen. And today was a great test for Møller for a couple of reasons. First of all, this is the first time that he's played on a big stadium. I know that he's had some big matches in Davis Cup, but facing Fonseca on a match that's going to be televised everywhere, that adds a lot of pressure. And Elmer came out a little bit tentative in those first games. Fonseca won that first set very comfortably, 6-2, and Møller was far away from his best tennis. It is also possible that Elmer was a little bit tired because he had played a lot of tennis coming into this match against Fonseca, and he also qualified in Madrid. But what was so interesting to me in this matchup were the backhand-to-backhand exchanges. And it is possible that Møller might have the fastest backhand in the world. And you guys know how impressed I am by Fonseca's power level. I think his ground strokes match up with Sinner and Alcaraz. I've made 2 videos on his ground strokes, one for the forehand and one for the backhand. And when it came to the forehand, Fonseca's was faster than Möller's, and it was also more consistent. But on the backhand wing, Elmer's backhand was a lot faster than Fonseca's. And that's saying something, because Fonseca hits that backhand incredibly hard. And now that I got a chance to watch Møller in a full match, I have a better idea on the weak spots in his game. And clearly that one-handed backhand slice can get a lot better, especially when he's defending. And also his serve, I'm not sure if he just had a bad serving day. Initially when I watched him in those challenger matches, the serve seemed okay, but today he wasn't serving well. Fonseca, on the other hand, seems to be maturing before our eyes. I listened to his post-match interview, and he said that he took a couple of weeks off and he's coming into this tournament fresh. I think he can do a lot of damage in Madrid.